Oh, did we? Oh, ugh. Oh, well, hey, there you go. All right, that's good. Well, huh? Let's do it.
You got a team, here's a word to the wise. You want to dominate your league? Go to Football Guys.
Football, I'm living in a fantasy. Football, got everybody mad at me. Football, cause every game I had to win. Football, I gotta be a champion. Football, I'm living in a fantasy.
Yeah, that's right. We are living in a fantasy, and we're living in the reality of it's Cleveland and Houston, the first game up in part 2 of the Week 13 preview. And the Cleveland side, well, things got real interesting because Deshaun Watson is out there now, Bloom, and we could say, okay, they could ease him in and they could use a lot of Nick Chubb. Of course, they're already going to do that. But we could also say, let's just lift everybody from Cleveland and start Deshaun Watson. In fact, I know plenty of people that are going ahead and just throwing him out there. You got Deshaun Watson. You might be playing him this week.
Yeah, you might. And of course, there's lots of stories intersecting here, but we'll just talk about the fantasy angle. There's a true boom bust play here to Deshaun Watson, and this is where projecting the games every week really helps. It's hard to project him for more than 20 to 25 pass attempts just because of the likely game script, unless Houston draws from some well of emotional energy with the welcoming, I'm making air quotes, Deshaun Watson back. The Cleveland should roll in this game. So Deshaun Watson, he still could have multiple pass touchdowns. He still could have some big plays downfield. Really, the tension here is, will Deshaun Watson be rusty? And will Deshaun Watson have to do a lot for Cleveland to win this game? But obviously, this is a big Nick Chubb game. Amari Cooper. We're going to watch David Njoku, who has a new knee injury, apparently. But as long as he's active, we're going to play him. Even Donovan Peoples-Jones, who, remember, there were some reports that there was a good connection between the two of them. So it begins the Deshaun Watson Cleveland era. And for Houston, they're waiting for something to begin. This isn't it.
Yeah, and the Houston side is like, I don't know. Are you really trusting anybody?
No.
Houston? Oh.
Right. Pierce, Cooks, Collins, they could hit. Kyle Allen as a quarterback too could hit. So I'm not saying there's nothing here, but I would not count on there being anything here. I'm playing the Cleveland defense.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we do. We'll just go ahead and do it. So Seahawks and Rams, much more interesting, Bloom. And interesting because the Seattle side, okay, you're going to lick your wounds, right? Yeah, overtime, loss to the Raiders. Now you're going to beat up on your divisional opponent, the Rams, because they're no good. And how are you going to do it? Lots of Kenneth Walker. Lots of basically whatever you want, Bloom.
Right. So Geno Smith, kind of like Deshaun Watson, not sure if you're loving playing Geno this week, simply because is he going to have to do a lot for them to win this game? Because as we'll talk about, the Rams are very offensively limited, offensively challenged right now. So yes, Kenneth Walker, although let's see if his blocking improves. It was terrible last week. Yes, you're going to keep playing Lockett. He's on a touchdown streak. You're going to keep playing DK Metcalf. But again, this is not a game. Look at Kansas City last week against the Rams. You don't have to do that much on offense to beat the Rams. Now, one thing I want to point out here, Cecil, just very quickly, because, Seattle's making a playoff push, and they still have, after this game, they play the Rams in week 18. So the next time somebody complains about fantasy football schedules, oh, my total points is higher, and I've got a 2-7 record or whatever, I'm the third highest scorer, and I'm going to miss the playoffs. It works that way in the NFL too. Is it fair that Seattle's going to play the Rams when they don't have Matthew Stafford and don't have Aaron Donald and don't have Cooper Kupp, and who knows who else is going to be sat by the time they get to week 18, right? Is that fair? Does the NFL need to do something about that? Does the NFL need to install victory points or all play record? No. It's just how it goes, man. It's life. There's one game. You win that one game. You play whoever's on the schedule that week. It's the Rams without anybody.
It's the Rams without anybody, and it's you without any Rams.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's a nice little syllogism there. I like that.
Dude, when I get 3 hours of sleep like I did today, you're going to get some wild stuff.
That's good. This is the new show. It's Up All Night with Cecil Lammey. It's good because I like that syllogism, Cecil. It's like, as the Los Angeles Rams are to adequate offensive players, so is your fantasy lineup to the Los Angeles Rams. Bryce Perkins, you never know. We saw a shootout last week with the Raiders, so maybe Perkins could hit if he's even the starter. Otherwise, it's just a desperation play. You know, I mean, here's my note for the Rams this week, Cecil. It was a good run. It was a good run.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. That's a good note. Hey, you want it all, right?
Yeah.
You want it all. So there you go. That's what you did. You paid the price and now you're paying it and you will be paying it for a while.
Yeah.
Miami wants to pay the price. They want to keep it going though there as well. So it's Dolphins and 49ers. This is like the Spider-Man meme where they're like pointing at each other, right? Except Miami has better quarterback. Miami might have a better head coach. And I love Kyle. I love Kyle, but I've always had an appreciation for Mike McDaniel, known him since he was a teenager, man. So let's talk about Miami and the 49ers. That is the next game up. And the Miami side, it's like, okay, Tua, Tyreek, Waddle, right? Start your Dolphins in this game where they're going to be looking at themselves on the other side of the field.
Yes. And see, better head coach yet to be seen. Let's say Miami has a head coach with less baggage, right? Less regrets, or you always wonder about Kyle Shanahan's decision making based on everything that's happened, right? The major disappointments he's had, even though it's in the context of a very successful career. I think of this game, Cecil, I always feel like we want to remember Super Bowl because they only supposed to happen every 4 years. Super Bowl rematches. You remember this one, Cecil? The Steelers, their last gasp of the great Steelers dynasty was actually against Dan Marino in Miami in the AFC Championship game. John Stallworth was still playing really well at that point. The Steelers made the AFC Championship game and lost. So I remember as a little Steelers fan, all I wanted was for Miami to lose to San Francisco, and they did. And that was it. And that was the closest Dan Marino ever got to winning a Super Bowl early in his career, right? So, there's going to be another one like Joe Burrow. There's going to be
and that was year 2 for Dan Marino, if memory serves, right?
Right. You
never went back.
Never went back. You never know. This is a big playoff implications game. Nothing is Look, there's 6 weeks left in the season. It's a sprint. Well, it's not really a sprint because it's a grind. But the point is how these teams perform over the next 6 weeks. And we've seen it this year with the variance, with the volatility. If you get cold, no matter what you did up to this point, if you get cold, if you go 2-4, 1-5 down the stretch, and you look at some of these team schedules, there's very few gimmies on these team schedules. So all these games are important now. And from a fantasy football, again, Seattle and San Francisco are going to be in a dogfight. Miami's in a dogfight with everybody in their division. They're in a dogfight just to make the playoffs. So this is a big game. And this should be a high-scoring game. This should be a game that helps a lot of fantasy lineups. So, yeah, Tua to Hill, Tua to Waddle. Watch Wilson's health, but it's probably Jeff Wilson. There's a chance Raheem Mostert's going to play. It's not so much that you're going to play Raheem Mostert, but that could affect Jeff Wilson's ceiling. If Mostert can't play, let's watch and see how Myles Gaskin looks, see how much work he gets. Maybe Trent Sherfield's the secret weapon here. What's going to be interesting, Cecil, like you said, the Spider-Man meme, well, they're going to know the playbooks of each other's offenses. So as a play caller, what do you do? As a defensive play caller, what do you do? So that tells me maybe it's a player that's more obscure in one of these offenses that is the player that pulls the team to victory. On the Miami side, it could be Trent Sherfield. And on the San Francisco side, we'll see. But of course, the biggest player here it's always back to Jimmy Garoppolo. It always comes back to a test. So on one hand, whenever Trey Lance goes down, it's almost like there's a sigh of relief for San Francisco, for Kyle Shanahan, right? But you're right back where you started. Can Jimmy get it done?
Yeah, can Jimmy get it done? And now with less Debo, I don't know. Is Debo going to play? We're recording on Thursday morning, full disclosure, and we don't know where Debo Samuel's at in terms of his health status. Christian McCaffrey, what'd they say? Knee irritation?
Irritation.
Right? Irritation. Okay. That's fine. It's not fine behind him because now without Elijah Mitchell, you're like, okay, who's going to be? So we're going to watch that. And then we're going to see who else San Francisco can trot out there in this game of Spider-Man.
Right. And it is Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, in the end, isn't this game going to come down to Jimmy Garoppolo versus Tua Tagovailoa? There's a 90%
It's going to come down to Jimmy against himself.
Well, or Jimmy against himself, right? So Garoppolo, there's a high fantasy ceiling here, as this could be a shootout. And he's going to throw to Brandon Ayuk. However, Brandon Ayuk might see a lot of Xavier Howard. It's a George Kittle game. Well, you're playing George Kittle anyway, but in a DFS angle, maybe George Kittle has a big game here. We know he's capable of, he can take over the game. He can have 13 for 202 touchdowns if this turns into a shootout. Deebo Samuel, you're probably playing him if he's active. It is an afternoon game. Expect him to be active. And even though Deebo is a player that will play through injuries, he'll play well through injuries. We have to watch this. But doesn't it all point to your counterpart to Trent Sherfield's cease is Jawan Jennings? And Jawan Jennings is a guy, a classic big slot. Garoppolo loves to throw to him. He had a 6-catch week last week. 3 weeks ago, he had 4 catches. And if Samuel's hurt, if Howard is blanketing Ayuk, it's Jennings. And maybe Christian McCaffrey. Then we turn the page to the backfield. Again, Christian McCaffrey. You have him, you're going to play him. Is he even going to play? If he plays, is there a point when they sit him? I have no idea. Who's the backup? I have no idea. So we have these, it's all about the Kyle Shanahan backfields, right? It's almost like Mike Shanahan is haunting us through his son and all of the tree, right? It's just a ploy to motivate Tatum Bell. All of this is just a ploy to motivate somebody else, right? These Shanahan backfields, San Francisco, we talked about the Jets, Miami. Good luck. What's the skeleton key? But what we know is if you're competent, you can get on the field, you can produce. I had Jordan Mason ahead of Tevin Coleman in the waiver wire pickup, and maybe have a little remorse.
Matt Barrows said, do not forget about Tevin Coleman, and wrote about it on the Footballguys Newswire, and it's like, doesn't that just make so much sense?
It does.
We can talk Jordan Mason all day, but it's Tevin Coleman. Kyle loves Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, well, he likes predictability. That's the thing. So I think it is Tevin Coleman. We're going to watch to see who the first running back off the bench is. Really, I'll say this. If Tevin Coleman gets called up on Saturday, then he's going to be the backup. And they can try to sell us on Tyrion Davis Price because they spent a 3rd-round pick on him, but he's not even good enough to be up. And he didn't look great when he was on the field earlier this year. Jordan Mason did look good. And isn't this going to be potentially another scenario? Ryan Riddle, who pops up every now and then on Twitter. Love Ryan. Early draft picks have to prove they can't play. Late draft picks, undrafted players have to prove they can. We'll give them a chance to prove that he can, a little more chance. So I would say I would rank them Coleman, Mason, Davis, Price. But absolutely, if this knee irritation becomes more, knee aggravation, knee frustration, I don't know what the next step up from irritation would be, consternation, then somebody's going to matter. Maybe more than one somebody is going to matter. This game is going to matter. And I'm just sad that this game is going to be going on, but so is Cincinnati, Kansas City. How can you watch them both at the same time?
Yeah, spoiler alert, because this is the matchup. This is the contest. This is the game that we're all waiting for with great anticipation, and that is Kansas City, and that is Cincinnati. And the Kansas City side, we've seen them the last couple of weeks, Bloom, they'll have a little bit more balance. And by more balance, I mean 40 passing attempts and 30 rushing attempts. But for Kansas City, that's still balance, okay?
Sure.
Because usually it's like 60 passing attempts and 15 rushing attempts. Well, no, they're going to run it a little bit more, and they can, and they will. It's on the road. And so Isaiah Pacheco, RB2 flex play for you. He's got my heartstrings for sure. But Kansas City side, and we're watching the health status of the wide receivers, the receiving weapons, and we know it's all about Travis Kelce. So Kansas City's pretty easy to figure out. Happy learn how to putt, because if they can run the ball, how in the hell, sorry, Joe, do you stop this team? You don't.
Yeah. And see, I'm already starting to get questions. Should we be worried about players for Kansas City even sitting in week 17? I don't know about week 17. Week 18, yes. They have a 1-game lead on the Bills and the Dolphins right now, but this is a game that could determine, because again, Bills, Dolphins, they have some tough schedules the rest of the way. With Kansas City, this is a team that just keeps chugging along, and some of the names change on offense and on defense, but the results don't change. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. This is fun. What a great rematch, especially for Cincinnati coming off of the rematch with Tennessee, right? Your wonderful pen as a writer could not pen a better story for Cincinnati to prove to themselves again that they can do it. But Kansas City has their own thing to prove here, because we can look back at that AFC title game and say Kansas City just let up. Kansas City should have won going away, and they just let up emotionally, and they couldn't get their energy, even in the end when they had chances to win, over the top. Patrick Mahomes, yes. Cincinnati's defense has been bend but don't break. We'll see if Patrick Mahomes can break them. Isaiah Pacheco regulating the offense as you laid out. Pacheco is a solid running back too. He has more upside than you think. Then, of course, you're playing Travis Kelce, and we're going to watch. Sky Moore's on the way up. Juju Smith-Schuster, we're watching. He's been banged up some this year, but we know that, especially on those extended plays, he and Patrick Mahomes can make some magic, and this is going to be a magical game. And for Cincinnati, it could be a magical game with all of their offensive weapons back on the field.
Yeah, all of their offensive weapons, including now with more Jamar Chase, and this is exactly what we've been waiting for. And then we'll check the health status of Joe Mixon, Bloom again Thursday morning. So we'll see there. But hey, it's Samaje Perine. I'm fine with that. Yeah. But it might be Mixon and Chase and everybody back to normal, to regular and at home for Cincinnati, to prove that last year wasn't a fluke, and to prove that if they meet in the playoffs again, Cincinnati's going to go toe to toe. They might even beat them. And this is what it's all about. Like, the last two games, these are the most interesting games of the week, Bloom, maybe of the year.
Yes. Well, it's certainly just, I mean, again, I'm speechless in some ways because I don't want to talk about this game. I just want to watch it. I just want to let it wash over me. Right. And what can I add to this game? Not much. But for fantasy, you want to know, look, Joe Mixon probably going to be back. Play him. So we'll see if we see a little more Samaje Perine. You got to pace yourself down the stretch here, team. Jamar Chase, first week back, you still got to play him, and you're still going to play Higgins. Boyd is the one that fades into the background. You're still going to play Hayden Hurst because tight end is so brutal. You're still going to play Joe Burrow. This should be a great toe-to-toe battle with Burrow and Mahomes. And what else is there to say? I mean, every time we get Burrow versus Mahomes, we should just say thank you, football gods. What I'm struck by, I just want to take a moment out because I'm struck by this as we're talking about Burrow and Mahomes. Again, I mentioned this with Burrow. It's similar with Mahomes. I mean, how many things had to happen exactly the way they happened for us to end up at this moment, right? For Mahomes to end up a Chief, for Burrow to end up a Bengal, and even in their own careers.
For Burrow to even end up at LSU.
Yeah, for Bird even up drafted. I mean, what would he have been, like a Matt Castle type 6th or 7th round pick if he had just languished somewhere? And who knows what would ever have become of him? So he could be playing in the CFL like Chad Kelly, right? Doing well in the CFL, may I add. And so, yeah, I just appreciate that this game is happening. I appreciate that Miami-San Francisco game is happening. And for all the bad football we watch, especially as fantasy analysts and football personalities that make you question your life choices, there's nothing you question when you're watching these games.
No, nothing you question when you go, okay, Chiefs and Bengals, let's do it. Then Chargers and Raiders.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. The Raiders might be able to surprise. It's not home at Vegas. We'll talk about the Chargers side first, which means I guess we'll watch the health status of Mike Williams or not, because DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer are doing great things.
Yeah.
So it's like, Williams, just heal, buddy. Heal up. Be good, buddy. But they need to figure out how to win. That's a team that doesn't know yet how to win consistently. Austin Eckler's fantastic. Justin Herbert's a superstar. And again, Keenan Allen's back, and it's going to be 5 for 56 and maybe a touchdown. I don't know, something like that. But you've already got the other weapons. So Mike Williams, whatever. It's just Chargers. Be careful. Be careful, because the Raiders with 2 fewer wins, right? Chargers have 6 wins. Raiders have 4 wins. Be careful. Raiders might get this one from you.
Yeah. Raiders are actually playing really well right now. And this is a game not as exciting as those other games in terms of NFL implications, but for fantasy implications. Every time I see Chargers Raiders cease, even though it was before we were alive, I think AFL shootout, right? The AFL pushing the bounds of offensive football.
You have an interesting mind.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's my mind. What can I say? I'm happy to be stuck with it because at least I'm not bored. So shootout potential, right? Justin Herbert could be a week winner for you here. Of course, Austin Eckler, of course, Keenan Allen, even Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter if Mike Williams is out. DeAndre Carter has been a good play every week. Mike Williams is out. Even Gerald Everett. And see, remember that game when Gerald Everett last year dropped like 3 touchdown passes?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? Whose number got called on the 2-point conversion to win the game last week? Gerald Everett. And he came through. So you like to see that. So even Gerald Everett, especially Gerald Everett, with the state of the tight end position, but like you said, the Raiders could sneak up on you in this one. And this is a team, I have no idea. Should they keep Josh McDaniels? Should they keep Derek Carr? Should they keep Josh Jacobs? It really does seem like the Gruden Mayock era has put this team in a black hole.
Yeah, and poor Mike, he gets blamed for it, and he didn't even do anything. Because Gruden and Dave Rosano ran that team. Like, Mayock was the figurehead who would go talk to the media. That was it.
Maybe it was whenever they fired Reggie. Maybe it's when they fired Reggie McKenzie, you know?
Yeah, and then tried to subsequently get rid of all the good players that Reggie McKenzie got. Yeah. It's like the curse of Reggie. But they're blessed, Bloom, with Josh Jacobs. But Jacobs has a calf thing, but he had a calf thing last week.
Right.
So it's worse now, I guess. I mean, this is what happens when you get 300 yards in a game. You're going to get a little banged up. So we're watching the health status of Josh Jacobs, but they've clearly done something there. It's like, okay, you want to pay the man? Or is he going to leave in free agency? And I feel bad if he's going to give it all and get banged up and then not get what he could get in free agency. So we'll see. But Josh Jacobs has been the key. And then, working from there and going to your Matt Collinses and your Devontae Adamses and everything else. But Jacobs has been that key for the Raiders playing better football. And the Broncos are everybody's get-right game because ever since they beat the Broncos, now they got 2 in a row.
Yeah. Hopefully that works out for Baltimore this week. Is Jacobs okay? I don't know. You're going to play him, but if he's not okay, does that make this offense fall apart? Derek Carr has actually been playing well lately. Derek Carr, you might consider as a streamer this week. Again, shootout potential. And you might say if Jacobs isn't okay, that's good for Carr, but also could be bad. It's no matter what, Devontae Adams is going to get his. And if Jacobs isn't okay, or if this becomes a shootout, Adams could be a week winner. Even Foster Moreau and Mac Hollins, who both scored last week, they get consideration here. Shootout potential. And again, if Josh Jacobs isn't himself, then more is going to fall on Derek Carr. If Josh Jacobs doesn't play, Zamir White and Amir Abdullah both become what-the-heck flexes. White looked good on his 2 runs last week. I think 2 for 28. And obviously this offensive line has been effective. Amir Abdullah, 55 yards on 6 touches and a touchdown last week. Again, shootout potential here. So while we're watching those 2 great games, he's up in the corner of the screen or along the bottom, wherever they put the scrolls these days. Just watch for those points. That will be your fantasy matchup. But be a football fan. Enjoy football, because I don't know if it's going to be that easy to enjoy the games on Sunday and Monday night.
Yeah, and that should be standardized, Bloom. I don't have time to get into this, but I hate when I watch a game.
They should just crowdsource it.
We're going to be fancy and put our graphics over here, and you're going to have to look over here. And how about this? And it's like, no, put it at the damn bottom. Give me a ticker and stop putting Thursday night's games on Sunday, right? Like, I already know what happened Thursday night. I don't need to see it on the ticker on Sunday. I'm getting beside myself, Bloom. But yes, Sunday night, Indy and Dallas. Okay, Colts and Dallas and Jeff Saturday. That's a lot to say there, Bloom. Again, it's all about time. Too many questions. Is what the Riddler would say. But with the Colts side, all right. How excited are we against Dallas when Dallas could just beat the hell out of them?
Yeah, exactly. The Cowboys and the Colts, Cecil, you know how this story ends. You grew up on a ranch, right? The Colts don't win. The Cowboys win, right?
The Colts get broken.
Yes, they do. Poor Matt Ryan. Now I'm just picturing like Matt Ryan with a saddle on his back or something. Nah, it's bad. It is bad. He looks more like a giraffe. Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, you're going to keep playing them. There's going to be production, not necessarily a ceiling game here. Paris Campbell, what the heck flex, although we saw Jelani Woods as a what the heck tight end, didn't practice Wednesday. If Jelani Woods is playing and Kylan Granson's not, or maybe even if Kylan Granson is, you could go with Jelani Woods. But for the Colts, well, they gave us this Jeff Saturday story. And it's been kind of a bizarre season. I think what happened, Cease, with the Colts this year was all this time, Jim Irsay has been Jim Irsay, right? Do you remember in the early days of Twitter when like every week you'd be like, I'm going to give away $10,000. I'm going to give away a diamond ring. I'm going to give away, right? And just who knows, who can figure out this riddle? And it was something based on like Fleetwood Mac lyrics or something,
Okay.
Like he's always been this guy, but it hasn't crept into how the team has been run yet until this year. And then you see like, oh yeah, Jim Irsay runs this team, so you don't know what's going to happen. But we do know that Dallas, we don't know that Dallas is going to win. But again, here's the tension with Dallas. Everything, Tyron Smith's going to be coming back, Cease. Everything is in place for Dallas. Everything except the head coach. But
yes,
shouldn't matter in this one.
Yeah, but if guys can rally around and win despite their head coach, well,
Right.
that's good news for the Cowboys. So just keep doing that, Dak and company. And I saw James Washington was back at practice. He might be the 3 someday, not this week. And it's not like we'll be talking about James a whole lot, but I always had a soft spot for James Washington, Oklahoma State Cowboys, baby. But let's talk about those Cowboys and those stars and Zeke and Pollard and CD, of course. One of the tight ends, they all look the same. They're like the Krieger clones from Archer. They're like clone bone. Like, yeah, it's the Cowboys tight end situation. But either way, Bloom, let's talk about those Cowboys who could have a big game at home.
Yeah, and Jimmy in the chat room mentioned Christine McPhee of Fleetwood Mac, one of the charter members there, passed away. So yeah, Fleetwood Mac, maybe I guess we probably have a lot of older people listening to the show more than we're older people. And don't stop thinking about tomorrow. But the Dallas Cowboys thinking about Sunday night. Remember this, it's fuzzy math, but if Philly loses one more game other than the Dallas game, and they play Tennessee this week, then Dallas will have a chance to win this division if they can beat Philadelphia, if they can win out. And Minnesota's only 1 game ahead. Remember, they spanked Minnesota. So Dallas still very much has the number 1 seed in their range of outcomes. Not that it might matter. It might be better for this team to play away from Arlington, to be honest. Right now, I had to play one of Ezekiel Elliott or Tony Pollard. I think it's Elliott. Elliott's been playing better. Elliott automatically gets his number called at the goal line. Maybe Pollard and the extra work he took, the extra snaps, slowing him down a little bit. They're both going to get their share. Pollard is certainly at least a flex play, if not a running back too. But Elliott, I'm more excited in this game that Dallas should be able to control. CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, he of the 2 touchdowns. Even Michael Gallup is a what the heck flex here. Stephon Gilmore on the other side. Maybe you go to the secondary receivers more. And Dak Prescott, that solid number 1 quarterback. But we need Dak Prescott to be Cease. Is Peyton Manning. And when I say Peyton Manning, I'm remembering in that playoff game, I think it was against the Steelers, wasn't it? When Tony Dungy was putting the punt team out there, and Peyton Manning said, get back on the sideline. Dak Prescott needs to overrule Mike McCarthy. The players will have your back, Dak. Just, you know what to do. He doesn't.
No, don't get me started, because it's like, how's a $1 billion corporation not know?
Oh, they all do. That's all.
You know what I mean?
That's the secret. That's the secret
but Nathaniel
of America.
Hackett got hired, so it's like
the meritocracy is a myth, and I'm not just talking about the NFL.
Oh God, yeah. Let's do a show on corporations. Let me get a little bit more sleep. Let's talk about Saints and Buccaneers. Is Tommy Brady going to have a hard time with the Saints? Doesn't he always?
Yeah.
Are the Saints going to have a hard time with themselves?
Yeah.
It's Monday night. It's not that great, but let's get into it. Let's talk Saints first, buddy.
Yeah, hey, this is a game with playoff implications. Ugly game. Maybe New Orleans last stand, and they wouldn't have it any other way than to be against Tom Brady. Chris Olave's in, and that's maybe it. I understand. Look, if you've been playing Alvin Kamara, other than the game against the Raiders, does sound familiar, other than when they play the Raiders, you have not been happy with the results, and he hasn't really looked as sharp. It looked like himself, fumbled at the goal line last week. They did play San Francisco pretty close. That was more because of the defense than the offense. So I even understand if you're benching Alvin Kamara, only 2 teams on bye, a lot of running backs coming on. Someone said Jeff Wilson or Alvin Kamara, assuming Wilson gets in full practices.
Right.
I can't give you a reason to play Alvin Kamara over Wilson, except that we all spent an early round pick on Kamara, and Wilson was on the waiver wire a couple of weeks ago. That's it. But that's the kind of reasoning that gets you into trouble in fantasy football. Juwan Johnson didn't get a touchdown last week. Had one go off his hands. So roll the dice, George Juwan Johnson. Why not? And I will say this, Cease. We saw last week Cleveland beating Tampa. We've seen teams get up for Tom Brady and beating Tampa. The Saints will too. The whole city will. That's one of the things I love about this city. In a miserable season from the Saints, if they can just beat Tom Brady, all will be forgiven.
Yeah, they beat Tom Brady. All is forgiven. Is Tom Brady going to beat himself? And then we look at the situation with, I guess Leonard Fournette's going to be back this week. I guess. Okay. Do they need him? Not really. So anyway, let's talk about Tampa Bay and wrap this thing up, buddy.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, Tom Brady.
And I've said buddy too much this morning.
That's okay, buddy. Tom Brady versus the Saints is almost always a floor game. Marshawn Lattimore's back, and Chris Godwin already moved ahead of Mike Evans. I understand benching Mike Evans. I'm not saying bench Mike Evans, but I'm not going to talk you out of it, depending on the other option. Even if Leonard Fournette plays, doesn't it make sense that Rachaad White would be ahead of him at this point? And otherwise, take your time getting back on the field, Leonard Fournette. Remember, this team is only half a game ahead of the Falcons. Falcons playing the Steelers, very winnable game. So Tampa could be going into this game needing this game to stay in first place. And that's the state of the NFC South.
Yeah, that is the state of the Audibles Week 13 preview part 2, everyone. And we appreciate everyone for jumping on board early. Somebody got called into the studio, but fortunately my studio is right here. So
right down the hall.
No morning commute. I just got to turn on the equipment and test it before I jump on the Players Club with Nate Jackson, New York Times bestselling author, and also our arch nemesis of our best friend, Frank Schwab. I've never talked to Nate about it. Yeah, because he put Frank in his book, in his New York Times bestselling book, as like Frank's like the worst media member ever. Because Frank, who does his job very well, like went to Jake Plummer one time and asked him a question and like, just asked him a tougher question, I guess. And Nate like lost his mind over it. I've never talked to Nate about it, like ever. But I might bring it up today, Bloom, because I'm in a mood.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, hey, why do you not like one of my best friends? Like, seriously, like, why do you not like a reporter doing his job? Hey, Justin Simmons just yelled at Mike Kliss yesterday, right? I'm getting texts about that right now from people who are out of town. It's like, ooh, what's the T? T, have you not been paying attention to this stupid team? Like, seriously. I don't have time for it. 3 hours of sleep. I'm answering questions from people out of town who are Broncos bloggers. Like, what's the T? Pay attention or move to Denver or stop bothering me at 8 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, Bloom, I said I was in a mood. So Nate Jackson, look out. Players Club. Here we go.
Yeah, the haters club, the player haters club is more like it.
The haters are here, right? So there we have it. That is a wrap. Hey, I know it's annoying to talk about. Oh, hey. Oh, thank you, Bloom. Look at you.
Yeah, don't thank me. It was Brandon in the chat room.
Oh, Brandon, thank you, because we got to do this.
It's time for the Sleeper of the Week, powered by Sleeper.
All right, Bloom, I apologize. You're doing the heavy lifting today. Sleep of the week is me. I've had 3 hours of sleep. So
you're still sleeping.
Please give me something.
Your alarm clock's going to go off and you're going to wake up and you're going to realize you dreamed this. You didn't even do the show yet.
Did I do a whole show?
Yeah, you did it. We still have to do this show, and you still have to do the Players Club, and I still have to do some sleepers. I talked about Dontrell Hilliard. Look, running back, Zonovan Knight, Ty Johnson, somebody for San Francisco behind Christian McCaffrey. Let's say Devin Coleman. Looks like Jalen Warren's going to play. So he's looked good last week. Benny Snell was a nice resurgence. Wide receiver, Sky Moore, Juwan Jennings, DeAndre Carter. We talked about in the first episode, Isaiah McKenzie, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Look, if at this point, you're probably not having to dig too deep for the sleepers. Only 2 teams on bye. Next week, 6 teams on bye. So it'll be a much more important segment. But it's just, again, Cecil, I want to say, hey, they get us out of bed, right? Our people, they get us out of bed. It strikes me that there's so many people that look forward to what we do, and I appreciate the energy that they bring. And now that there are producers, Cease, now we have producers in the chat room that just make sure that we have the show running correctly, because we need that sometimes.
Yeah, Brandon sent us a 1099. Anyway, do all those YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. Until the next time, I'll get some sleep. But please be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and as always, just stay frosty.